Hi guys, this lesson should be a lot of fun. We're going to do a lab on AWS CodeDeploy and we're going to deploy to Amazon ECS. So this is going to be the configuration. We're going to have an application load balancer. We'll have ECS with a Fargate cluster and a service. And in that service will be one task. It shows two here, but we'll just do one. And the ALB will be directing traffic to that task in a target group called TG1. So that will be our first target group. Then we'll upload an AppSpec.yaml file to Amazon S3, and I'll show you what that is shortly. And then CodeDeploy will actually obtain that file, and with the instructions, it will coordinate the deployment with ECS and the ALB. It will then launch a task in the second target group, and then it will start shifting traffic across and removing the connection to target group 1, and then finally we'll actually take down those tasks as well. So that's the way it looks. Should be good to build this out. Let's go over to the console and get started. First thing I need to do in IAM is create a role, and this is going to be a role for CodeDeploy. So we create role, we choose CodeDeploy here, choose CodeDeploy-ECS, because what we're going to do is give CodeDeploy the rights to talk to S3, Lambda, SNS, and ECS, and also application load balancing. Now we won't be using a Lambda function or SNS, but we do need the others. So we choose that, click on next. It should find the policy for you, and if we have a look into the JSON, we can see we're getting rights here for ECS, elastic load balancing, and S3. Those are the key ones that we need. So let's choose next, choose review, and we'll call this ECS code deploy role and click on create role. The next thing we need to do is copy up our appspec.yaml to S3. So let's have a look at what appspec.yamls are. Now we're going to use this simple one here, but first I want to show you some examples for ECS, EC2, and Lambda. So this one here describes some resources with a task definition and a container. And then there's some optional properties. And then the key thing I want you to understand is the hooks. So this is describing the actions that take place at certain intervals or at certain stages of the deployment. So in this case for ECS, it's before install, after allow test traffic, before allow traffic, and then after allow traffic. Now these are different for the different delivery types. So here we have the hooks for EC2, and you've got before install, after install, application start and validate service. And then for Lambda, we've got before allow traffic and after allow traffic. Now you do need to know these for the exam because they do come up in questions. So I'm going to consolidate the information that you need to know on the training notes on our website. And so have a look there and just get a good understanding of what's actually taking place at these different stages. So for now, we just need this simple appspec.yaml. All it does is describe the resources, which are going to be an ECS service, a task definition. So you need to modify this. You need to put your ARN for your task definition in here. You can easily get that by going to ECS, go to task definitions, find my sample app that we created earlier, click on the app, go to JSON, and you can find the ARN here. So just copy that, paste it into your task definition ARN here. Make sure your container name is correct. In this case, it's my-sample-app, and the port is 80. So you'll find this appspec.yaml in CodeDeploy appspec.yaml. So that's in the course download. Let's go back to S3, and we're going to upload our file. I'm going to choose appspec.yaml. These are the examples I just showed you, so you can have a look at those. Just upload. We've got a success. So that's great. I'm now going to go and create my load balancer. So in EC2, I'm on load balancers. I'm going to create an application load balancer. Just going to call it my ALB. Listener is going to be port 80. I'm going to put it in the default subnet. Make sure, the default VPC. And make sure you're careful which VPC you put it in, because you've got to make sure your service is going to be in the same VPC. I'm just going to attach it to all AZs in public subnets. I'm going to choose web access. I just need port 80 for this one. And for target group, I'm going to create one called TG1. Change here to IP. Everything else can stay the same. I'm going to just go through next and create. That's our target group created. We can now go to ECS, clusters, and I've got a Fargate cluster. If you don't, just choose networking only powered by AWS Fargate. Next, give it a name and choose create. So in my Fargate cluster, I'm going to create a service. I'm going to choose Fargate, choose my sample app, call this blue, green. We'll just have one task. And now I want to choose a blue-green deployment, and you'll see it finds the service role for CodeDeploy. Choose next. Disable service discovery integration. You don't need to know that for this exam. Cluster VPC is going to be the same as the load balancer, so default. I'm going to change my security group to web access, again port 80. Oh yeah, I need to select my subnets. I'm going to put this in all the public subnets. That's all good. And auto assign public IP is enabled. And now we're going to choose our load balancer. So choose application load balancer. It's found the load balancer name, and we now need to add the container to the load balancer. So it's found my sample app. Let's choose add. For production listener port, choose 80:HTTP. It should be there for you. I'm going to disable test listener. I'm going to choose target group 1, TG1. And for target group 2, I'm just going to backspace that name out and call it TG2. Everything else looks correct. We've got HTTP, health checks, just a slash. Let's choose next. We don't need auto scaling. And that's everything. Let's choose create service. So it's creating the target group, it's created the service, and it's also created our CodeDeploy application. So let's go to CodeDeploy, refresh applications, and it's created an application for us. So in developer tools, CodeDeploy, applications, if you want to, you can create your own application here. You just have to choose the compute platform, because then the options for the deployments are different. In this case, it would be ECS. But we have one that's already created, so let's use that. We go into the application, and then we have a deployment group. So we'll go in there in a second. I want to show you how to create one manually as well. So here you would give it a name. You would choose your role, your ECS cluster, the load balancer, and then you would choose the target group 1 and target group 2. And then you have the options for how to reroute traffic. So remember, we've got linear and canary, and then all at once. So linear is where you have a increment, in this case 10%, and then an interval, in this case 1 minute. And so every 1 minute it will shift 10% of traffic. Whereas canary will be 10%, 5-minute interval, and then the rest of the traffic. So make sure you remember that for the exam. We're just going to cancel out because we have a deployment group already. So in our deployment group, everything looks like it's set up correctly for us. We now do create deployment, and we're going to choose the location of our S3 appspec.yaml file. So I'm going to go to S3 appspec.yaml, copy path, come back, paste that in, change to .yaml, and then you could then override the deployment configuration here for traffic shifting. We're going to leave it as it is. You can also change what happens when rollbacks occur. We're just going to choose create deployment. Now, I just want to set a couple of things up before I do that to show you what's going on. So at the moment, we have target group 1. We have a healthy instance. So if we go to ECS, tasks, we have this task running. If I get the public IP, we should find that we can connect to that. And we should also be able to connect to that from the load balancer. So let's click to the DNS name here, and we can connect to our application that way as well. So let's just keep on this screen here, target groups. Now you can see that traffic is only going to TG1 because it's the only one that's attached to the load balancer. And it's the only one that has any targets in it. There are no targets in TG2. So let's go back to CodeDeploy, click on create deployment. You'll now see a deployment status screen that shows you that the deployment is in progress. And you can see on the right here that you've got the traffic shifting as well. So at the moment, 100% of the traffic is in the original task set. So back on the diagram, this is the stage we're at. We still have all our traffic going to target group 1. CodeDeploy has picked up the appspec.yaml, and it's now coordinating the deployment. So it's going to launch these instances, then it's going to start directing traffic and then it will stop traffic going to the other target group, and then finally remove those tasks. So let's go back and see what's going on. Let's go to ECS. We now have 2 tasks running, so the second task has been spun up. If we go to target groups here, we'll see we still have all traffic going to target group 1, but we now have an unused target in target group 2. So that will just take a few more minutes. So that didn't take too long. We can now see that we have completed the deployment and the rerouting. So let's go back over to our target group, click on refresh, and sure enough we see that that jumped over. So now all traffic's going to target group 2, and we have our task there, which is in an initial status, and that should very quickly become healthy. And back in ECS, if we click on refresh here, we still have both tasks running, because remember, we're now at this point where we have the old task still running, but traffic has been directed to our new tasks. Now back in CodeDeploy, you can see that it's in a waiting state, so it's going to wait 1 hour before terminating the original task set. But we can expedite that by terminating the original task set by clicking this button here. And that will then immediately remove the task from the original task set. So let's go back over to ECS and click on refresh, and it's still running, but very quickly we should find that it gets terminated. And there we go, the original task is now gone, and we have the new task which is running in our second target group. So that's it for this lab, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Now what we could do is obviously build this into a pipeline. So we could put this in a pipeline with code commit, code build, and then through to deployment. We're not going to do that in this lab, but in the next lab, we're going to use AWS CodeStar, which will be a more end-to-end solution. Now, in terms of cleaning up, you can go up to your application level here, go into your application, and then just choose delete application and delete. We can then go to our load balancer and delete our load balancer, and then go to ECS, and we can go into our cluster and just delete our service. And that's all the resources that are going to cost anything. You might also want to go and clean up your target groups, so you could just go in and select each one and delete. And that's everything gone. See you in the next lab, guys.